episodes out there, and welcome back to News9 Live. I'm Shriya Kundu, back here with all the latest updates of the day on the top stories of the day from across the nation and around the world. And well, the top focus in this bulletin is climate change across the globe. And here are some quick headlines from across the world with regards to this particular matter. Well, our very first story comes in from Texas. Now, heavy rains caused flooding in eastern Texas over the weekend. From Dallas to Grimes County, residents woke to flooded or damaged roads after intense lightning storms. ABC affiliate WFAA reported high rainfall totals across southern North Texas and Central Texas, where flooding is most severe. Now, meanwhile, affiliate KTRK in Houston issued a flood watch for several counties, including Chambers, Grimes, Harris, and Montgomery. Meanwhile, on your screens, the drone footages we'll just bring to you, the footages showing extents of flooding from intense rain in East Texas. These are the visuals that we bring to you. The video also shows the road damage after the heavy rains in Texas. Moving on to a neighboring region. In Houston and surrounding areas, heavy rains trigger high waters, flooding neighborhoods and prompting over 400 rescues. Residents remain stranded on rooftops and roads submerged in murky water, as you can see in the visuals. Many prepare to evacuate as the situation only worsens. A flood watch remains in place, with forecasters warning of more rainfall and the potential for major flooding. About 11 million people in Texas and Oklahoma are under flood warnings and watches this weekend. And only time will tell whether situations indeed there is any kind of relief and situations do get better for the people there, or they worsen with the consistent heavy rains that the region has been receiving. Next up, this is another story of a flooded region, but this is from Brazil. Now, local authorities and volunteers rescued residents stranded in the flooded town of Canoas, southern Brazil, on Sunday, as speedboats, in fact, navigated inundated streets for people still trapped in their homes. Thousands of people have been stranded in Rio Grande do Sul state without food or water after the devastating floods killed at least 78. Heavy rains that caused the flooding in Rio Grande do Sul have displaced more than 1,15,000 people. Flooding from recent storms in the past few days have impacted more than two-thirds of the nearly 500 cities in the state, which borders Uruguay and Argentina. The rains also triggered landslides and the partial collapse of a dam at a small hydroelectric power plant. Take a look at this particular report from the ground.
Flooding caused by heavy rain in Brazil's southern state of Rio Grande do Sul has pushed the death toll up at least 78 people by the end of Sunday, with nearly 120,000 people displaced. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and his cabinet arrived in the region on Sunday morning to discuss rescue and reconstruction efforts with local authorities.
I know that we have many state roads that need repair. I want to tell you that I'm not worried because the federal government, through the Ministry of Transportation, will help you recover the state roads.
Volunteers with boats, jet skis, or that were even simply swimming have helped ongoing rescue efforts. The death toll could still drastically increase, as over 100 people were reported missing on Sunday, according to the state civil defense authority. Flooding from the storms over the past few days has affected more than two-thirds of the nearly 500 cities in the state, which sits on the border with Uruguay and Argentina. An Instagram video from the Army's Aviation Command showed an officer hitting the roof of the house with a brick to rescue the child and pull him to safety. Reuters blurred the toddler's face to protect his identity. The toddler and his relatives were trapped in the floods in Lajeado in southern Brazil. Floods have destroyed roads and bridges in several cities. The rain also triggered landslides and the partial collapse of a dam at a small hydroelectric power plant, leaving nearly 500,000 people without power on Sunday evening.
Now, what we've learned is Pope Francis sent his wishes to the Orthodox Christians and Eastern Catholic churches on Sunday as they celebrated Easter. The Pope also prayed for the victims of the floods in Brazil. Let's listen in to what was said by the Pope at this gathering as he addressed the mass gathering that had taken place.
With much affection, I send my best wishes to the brothers and sisters of the Orthodox churches and some Eastern Catholic churches who celebrate Holy Easter today, according to the Julian calendar. May the risen Lord fill all their communities with joy and peace and comfort those who are facing difficulties. To them, Happy Easter. I assure my prayers for the people of the state of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil affected by great floods. May the Lord welcome the dead and comfort their families and those who had to leave their homes.
Now, speaking of floods, let's next move on to Europe. Severe weather wreaks havoc in southwestern Germany, with emergency services and residents in a hurry to clear up the aftermath left by overnight thunderstorms and heavy rainfall and hail. The sudden onslaught of this severe weather followed several sunny days and summer-like temperatures, catching many off guard. The city of Frankfurt and surrounding regions bore the brunt of the storm, with up to 50 litres of rain per square metre pouring down within a few hours and flooding the streets. The weather is expected to calm down significantly in southwest Germany. However, there's still a possibility of isolated thunderstorms with heavy rain and storms cropping up from Saturday evening onwards. Next up, taking you to Myanmar, but this is a story not about a flood, but this time a heat wave. In fact, a scorching heat wave which has swept through Myanmar, breaking temperature records in April as per the Myanmar Department of Meteorology and Hydrology. In April this year, more than 10 regions in Myanmar experienced daily temperatures exceeding the previous records documented by local meteorological stations. Official meteorological data has revealed this particular information. Many areas in central Myanmar's Magwe and Mandalay regions have frequently appeared on the global list of hottest places. The unprecedented heat wave has triggered troubles for people's daily lives in the country, with reports of multiple cases of individuals fainting, even dying in fact, from the heat stroke across the country. Let's listen in to some of these reactions that's coming from the locals there.
အရန်ပူတော့နေလို့မရဘူးပေါ့နော်တော့ဟိုအရန်ပူတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်အေးတဲ့နေရာလေးတွေလည်းရှာနေရတယ်စိတ်ထဲမှာလည်းဟိုဟာဖြစ်တယ်လူကြီးတွေဆိုဘယ်လိုနေမလဲလို့လည်းတွေးမိရပေါ့နော်ဒီနှစ်ကပေါ့နော်ခါတိုင်းနှစ်ထက်ပိုဆိုးတယ်နေလို့ထိုင်လို့တော့အဆင်မပြေဘူးတနေ့ကုန်လည်းဘာမှမလုပ်နိုင်ဘူးဟောမီးပြတ်တော့ပိုဆိုးတယ်မီးပြတ်တယ်ဆိုတော့အိမ်ထဲမှာအရန်ပူတော့လေစောင်းတွေကိုရေဆွတ်ပြီးတော့အမိုးမိုးစောင်းတွေကိုကာပြီးတော့အဆင်ပြေသလိုပေါ့နော်ပတ်ကာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းအားသွင်းပတ်ကာလေးဝယ်ပြီးတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးအဆင်ပြေအောင်နေရတယ်
Next up, a video from Indonesia's National Search and Rescue Agency showed the extent of the flooding triggered by heavy rain and rescuers evacuating the survivors in these rubber boats. Now, authorities have said that 14 people were killed due to the floods and landslides, and the early morning floods in Luwu Regency affected more than 2,000 families and damaged more than 1,900 houses, though water levels have since started to recede in some areas. Now, search and rescue efforts are underway in Luwu Regency in Indonesia's South Sulawesi province, and these are some of the efforts that they've taken, the operations that have been launched in the area to ensure that people get the adequate assistance needed in these dire times. Now, people were forced to use canoes to move in the Burundian capital of Bujumbura as Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya was flooded. The flooding in Dadaab camp displaced near 20,000 people, many of whom had arrived in recent years after fleeing severe drought in the neighboring Somalia region. Now, in Burundi, around 32,000 refugees are living in areas hit by floods, 500 of whom require urgent assistance. Access to food and other necessities has become increasingly difficult as people have to pay high transport fees to use these canoes to reach markets and other amenities. People had been forced to flee, losing their homes again, showing how forcibly displaced people continue to be on the front lines of the climate crisis. Floods continue, to hit the parts of East Africa, impacting thousands of people, including refugees in the region, and leaving many of them homeless. Now, continuing to keep our focus on Kenya, flooding wreaks havoc in Bujumbura, capital of Burundi, forcing residents to resort to canoes of transportation. The situation, as we were just mentioning, in the refugee camp of Dadaab is dire, with nearly 20,000 people displaced, many of whom had actually fled from Somalia due to the severe drought, only to face flooding now. And approximately the numbers that we are getting here is that 32,000 refugees are grappling with the flooded areas, with 500 urgently needing assistance in Burundi, as we just showed you in our visuals. Moving up next, hunger and starvation are spreading across Sudan as the war that erupted in April last year between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces shows no sign of abating. Parts of the country are on the brink of famine. Agriculture has been ravaged as farmers have had their harvested crops stolen by the RSF. Hunger, not just fighting, is now driving displacement as people leave home in search of food. Malaria and other diseases are spreading among the displaced, and the key aid hubs have been looted by the RSF and its allied militias. And international aid is arriving in Sudan, and that is being blocked by the military from reaching people in areas where starvation has set in on a large scale. Almost 18 million people in Sudan are facing high levels of acute food insecurity. As per the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, the IPC, a globally recognized hunger monitor. Next up, shifting our focus to the Philippines. An incessant heat wave scorching the Philippines has left farmers unsettled as the above average temperatures put their crops and livelihoods at a risk. In fact, the country's weather agency has said that the heat index, the actual temperatures felt by the body to include relative humidity, is expected to remain at a record 45 degrees Celsius in the range, which it classes as dangerous, as conditions can trigger heat stroke from prolonged exposure. Well, continuing to keep our focus on Philippines, people in the town of Manila, Philippines, suffer extreme heat as the country's weather agency has said that the heat index is expected to remain at a record 45 degrees Celsius the whole week. Locals rolled out mobile showers to help locals battle this extreme heat. And facing these power and water shortages, the Philippines, along with the countries in Southeast Asia, have been grappling with extreme heat, suspending classes and warning people to take shelter and avoid prolonged exposure due to the possibilities of a heat stroke. In fact, sweltering heat in the Philippines can curb farm production, disrupt water and power, and weigh on businesses. But it also takes a toll on students, hampering the Southeast Asian nation's efforts to catch up to its neighbors in education. Take a look at this report as to how this has been affecting the students there, because schools have suspended classes given the kind of conditions that are prevalent there.
Heat Indices says it's felt like a whopping 122 degrees Fahrenheit in parts of the Philippines in recent days, as El Niño ratchets up humid summer heat that began in March. As a result, thousands of schools have suspended classes because of sweltering temperatures, affecting more than 3.6 million students, according to official data. It's another in a series of obstacles facing children in the Philippines. According to an international study of education systems, it scores among the lowest in the world in maths, science and reading, partly because of years of inadequate remote learning during the pandemic. 23-year-old student Kurt Mahuse is a senior in high school after his education stalled during lockdowns. Now, he says the heat is unbearable.
Here in the Philippines, it's extremely hot now. The heat burns my skin. It's not like the usual summer heat that is tolerable. Now I can barely stay long out in the heat.
It's part of a band of heat spreading across South and Southeast Asia this year. exacerbated by El Niño and climate change, and it makes it harder for children to simply learn. According to Save the Children Philippines, children are particularly vulnerable to heat-related illnesses including dizziness, vomiting and fainting when exposed to extreme heat for long periods. And high school teacher Medea Santos says it's become a struggle to get through the workday.
We are also affected. For example, me at my age, when the temperature is really high, my blood pressure shoots up. I have to make sure that I take my medicine every day for my blood pressure and maintenance. When teaching, we are also affected because it is uncomfortable. Because of the extreme heat, my back gets soaked with sweat and sometimes I get very dizzy.
Local media say the relentless heat is not expected to dissipate and has a 50% chance of intensifying this week. Students and teachers are worried about how much more learning they will lose out on, especially in areas where access to gadgets and the internet is sporadic and sparse. The State Weather Agency on Monday forecast that temperatures in the area around Manila could reach nearly 100 degrees in the next 3 days, while the heat index, what the body actually feels, is expected to remain higher at a record 113 degrees, in the range which it classifies as dangerous because conditions can trigger heat stroke from prolonged exposure.
Now, parts of the church and foundations of the old structures from the old Pantabangan town resurfaced in recent weeks following the prolonged lack of rain and the onset of the dry season. The ruins of the old town resurface whenever the dam dries up due to prolonged hot weather conditions. Now, according to the local government of Pantabangan, the old town was relocated in the 1970s when the dam was constructed. Here are some visuals from the particular area that we are flagging off. Now, despite a healthy winter rainy season, residents of Iraq's historic marshlands fear a possible drought in the summer, which will kill their livelihood, forcing some to even make backup plans as to their particular means to earn their bread and butter. Let's take a look at this report as to what the conditions are prevailing in the Iraqi marshlands.
This is Iraq's historic marshlands. The marshes are thought to be the inspiration for the biblical Garden of Eden and were named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2016. Marsh Arabs have called the area home for millennia, and water is essential to their way of life. They rely on it to fish and raise water buffalo. Last winter brought an abundance of rain, which led to a considerable boost in water levels this year. But still, local resident Mahdi Hussein fears that will change come summer.
Every day, as soon as we wake up in the morning, we take a look at the water. Is it down or up? When we first wake up, we look to see the water. If you see that the water has increased, you feel at ease. And if we see it has decreased, we feel sad about that.
Well, those were some of the updates from across the globe with regards to how climate change has indeed impacted the world and has wreaked havoc across places. With that, now we've come to an end to this bulletin, but do stay tuned to News9 Live as we keep coming back with all the latest updates through the day. Thank you for watching.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, that US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.